everyone, my name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Listen, y'all, today we gotta have a little bit of a difficult conversation. This is probably gonna be ranty and rambly. Hopefully I make some good points in here, but this is something that I have been sitting on literally the entire time I've been in the kink community, and I've always struggled with trying to know how to get my points across in the way that I mean them. But what I want to discuss is bisexuality and the BDSM community and the assumptions that go along with that. And what really motivated me to talk about this week is actually I made a video recently where I talked about how to spot fake dominance, and Kat Black left a comment on that video that I think really speaks to this experience. Love the video. The most common, quote, real submissives conversation I've had has been with men wanting me to do things with other women. It's a very distinct line for me, and so frequently I've been rejected by dominants or gaslit by them because I have no interest in sexually interacting with women. Quote, real submissives would do X is usually bullshit. And Kat has talked about this, I think, in little bits and pieces in various videos that she's done at various times, but we've never really had a standalone conversation about this assumption. And I think that we really need to, because I think it's something that really gets swept under the rug in the kink community. Like, we spend so much time kind of like congratulating ourselves that like, oh, we're so open and accepting and we're not judgmental like the mainstream vanilla world. And I think that really makes us blind to the assumptions that we do make, because we do make assumptions. And I guess before I get too far into this, I should just emphasize I am talking about primarily the experience of being a bisexual woman who is a submissive or a switch that is interacting with primarily male dominance. I don't know what the experience is if you are a bisexual man in the gay community. I don't know what it's like if you are a bisexual woman in the lesbian community. If you do have those experiences, I would love to hear from you. So go ahead and put it down in a comment in the comment section down below, because I am always looking to kind of see what other people's experiences are, because I'm not trying to say that like what I think here is the be all end all, because obviously things do vary so much, though oftentimes there are threads that link all of these different experiences together. But for my own life, you know, I can say that this isn't just Kat. I have also had this experience. Now, I don't hide the fact that I'm asexual. You know, I do use the split attraction model for myself, so my primary identity, you know, as far as sexual orientation would go, would be I am gray A, somewhere around that general region of existing. Whereas as far as my other forms of attraction go, like romantic attraction, I have and I do experience attraction to people besides just men. And so, you know, I guess to some extent that might make me bisexual or pan or something. I don't know. You know, honestly, just real talk for a second. The older I've gotten, the less stock I put in trying to assign a specific single label to my experience, because I just my personal life, I think, is more fluid than that. It's not necessarily very well described by any like one label, not to just be like, oh, I'm so special, but like the reality is that human sexuality is complicated, and like I've always said, like labels are simply our best way of trying to match human experience to a particular word or a particular phrase. And I don't necessarily know how well certain labels always do that, but it's like a different conversation for a different time. But suffice to say, I'm very open about the fact that like I'm gray A, that's part of my experience and informs how I do BDSM. And I kid you not, people have said this to me, just casually, like a munch, apropos of nothing. Oh, I just assumed you were bisexual. Like, I know that right now I'm wearing a t-shirt that has a unicorn on it, but where does that assumption come from? Am I accidentally performing bisexuality in a way that I'm not aware of? Maybe that's happening, but it's something that, you know, even for people that aren't asexual, people that are straight, people that are actually bi, the default assumption is that, like, even if you're not, like, really bi, whatever the fuck that means, you're gonna at least be okay and like want to interact with women in like a BDSM and or sexual capacity. And if you don't, that's like almost considered weird. Now, an important point to make here is I did actually, gosh, this is over a year ago, so I don't know if I can find it again, but I did find a study that was a, self-selecting survey for members of the pet play community. And when you look at that demographically speaking, there are way more bisexual people that are self-identified as bisexual that are part of the pet play community than you would find in the general average, survey of general North Americans. Way more. Like, I want to say it was like, gosh, I don't even remember the numbers. It was somewhere between like 25 and 50% of people like self-identified as bisexual compared to every other possible label. Straight, gay, lesbian, pansexual, asexual, like all the labels, right? Bisexual as a single label was like 25 to 50% of people. So, there are a lot more people presumably in the BDSM community that self-identify as bisexual for a variety of reasons versus like the general population. However, that doesn't make it okay to, one, make assumptions about somebody's identity, and two, make assumptions about things that they're okay with because of that identity. Like, whew. Oh man, let me tell you. So, the default here, I think the most sort of, just the most typical way that this assumption plays out is that if you are trying to navigate, let's say, a multi-person BDSM experience, the way that usually plays out is a dominant man with 2 to 5 submissive or switch women that lean submissive, doing things together. And maybe there's an idea that they're all gonna like co-bottom together and that involves kind of sexually interacting. That could look like one of the submissive women is kind of co-topping with the dom. It could look like there's some kind of like internal hierarchy. It could look a lot of things, but it's generally centered about the women interacting with the women, but ultimately also for the pleasure of the dominant man, which I hope we can kind of identify the problem with that is making somebody's sexual orientation a performance for somebody else is kind of a shitty thing to do. And, I think, again, with the kink community, we really like to differentiate ourselves and pat ourselves on the back, but like, what is one of the most common porn searches out there besides, I guess, the current thing, which is like a lot of people are apparently, according to sources I have, currently the trend is very much incest roleplay, and age-related things, but the other, like, classic big thing besides that is, of course, like, girl on girl, right? And that's a very, very much, like, a performance of lesbianism or bisexuality that is literally directly tailored, usually, for the pleasure and consumption by straight cis men. Now, there are other, obviously, types of pornography that are women interacting with other women that are designed for the female gaze, let's say. That's a different discussion. I'm talking about how oftentimes women performing with other women is literally centered around male pleasure. And that's very interesting because in the kink world, right, we always talk about how it's like, it should be for everybody's like mutual enjoyment and discussing limits and boundaries and making sure that everybody's going to have a good time, right? But there is this little nugget. And I think this assumption of bisexuality is like one of these little nuggets where it's like, but we're doing this for me, right? And it's like, it's almost like because it's so assumed that people are going to be okay with doing this, they actually want it as well, that people just like don't even think about the fact that it's like can be this performance thing or more tailored to the dominant man's enjoyment than about the submissive women enjoying themselves, because it does end up going these directions where it becomes a pressure to do it, an expectation to do it. What do you mean you're not okay with this? Everybody else is okay with it. What's wrong with you? Like, what else do we do that with in kink, right? Like, do we, I mean, this is like reverse kink shaming, like shaming somebody for not having a kink. Oh man, I should make a video about reverse kink shaming. It's almost like we shame people for not having this kink. Like, if people like aren't into even common things in BDSM, like bondage or gags or spanking, like people are like, oh, okay, and they generally like kind of move on. But when it comes to wanting to do like girl on girl stuff or co-topping or co-bottoming. It's like, what do you mean you don't want to do this? Wouldn't this be more fun? And it's like, no, actually, that's not really what I want to do. And also, like, you can be a bisexual person in the kink community. And if you are, you know, interacting with somebody of the same gender as you, like, you don't necessarily, you want that to just be between you two, right? It's not always about like, ooh, I want to have all the men in the room like staring at my scene. And that's one manifestation of this that I this is like almost a different conversation, but it is very closely related. Particularly in the world of rope bondage, when you have a female rope top doing a scene with a female rope bottom, I have had this scenario happen to me. Like, not only do you get all of the men, like, watching the scene, like, really intensely, but the rope top men, they almost, like, can't help themselves sometimes to like, they almost want to, like, insert themselves in it, and they want to be helpful. This isn't a lab scenario. You aren't a teacher. Like, I'm not asking for your help. Like, I don't want your advice about the difference between using a bula bula and a Somerville bowline. This is not the place to have this conversation. I'm literally already in the air. What are you doing? Like, literally, I haven't had that exact scenario happen, but I have had things where, like, a random fuckboy dude will, like, literally interrupt a scene while I'm in the middle of being suspended by a female rope partner that they would never do if I was being suspended by one of my male partners that does ropes. So, very interesting that happens. It's not really a bisexuality thing, but I think, like, it's almost, the thought that I'm having is almost that it's like women doing BDSM things with other women is kind of sanctified in the heterosexual, pansexual BDSM community only when a man is part of that interaction. And if there's just two women doing things, then the expectation is either that there must be male spectators or that men just feel more permission to, like, insert themselves into that. And, oh, I guess I should say this before I get too far. Hashtag not all men. I'm not talking about all male dominance. I'm not talking about all men in the BDSM community. I'm talking about the particular individuals that I've had experiences with, and let me tell you, it's not the female dominants that do this. So, what kind of gender dynamics are playing out here? Because there's definitely something going on. And really, when I'm talking about this, like, I'm doing it because I want to have, like, confirmation from other people. Like, has this been your experience? Because I like teaching and like giving advice. I do not know what the advice is for this scenario. We can be conscious about it. We can be conscious that, you know, we might have these assumptions, we might make these pressures towards people and work to not do that. But that has to happen on such a large scale to have this not be like an alienating thing. Like, can you imagine how many people must be completely alienated from doing BDSM at all because they had very negative experiences where somebody assumed that they must be bisexual and therefore would be okay doing certain things because of that. How many people have been like, hey, you know, I'm trying to do BDSM, but I can't find a partner that, like, is okay with the fact that, like, I don't want to do things with their other submissive female partners, that, you know, I don't want to do XYZ thing. Like, it happens. And, you know, I guess for me, I had assumed that part of it, you know, when I have been rejected by partners, it's been because I'm asexual. I didn't realize maybe the component of that wasn't my asexuality necessarily so much as it was, I don't want to do performative things with women to make you happy. Like, and you know, maybe this will be a little bit of a personal story. Hopefully it'll help illustrate something for you. I am a sadist. I've talked about that many times. Hello, this might be a surprise for you. The primary way that I would want to express my sadism is doing things with other women. I don't necessarily feel very sadistic towards men in general. Not never, but in general. I have had enjoyable sadistic experiences with male bottoms. It's been very lovely. I would never discount those. But my primary drive is to do that with female partners, not involving men or male dominant. I would, you know, co-topping with other women, having a scene that involves multiple female partners. I would definitely do that, but it feels like a very, like, woman to woman experience that I want to have, like, as a woman with another woman. God, is this like today, and am I really a lesbian? Like, I want it to be a woman to woman thing, not something that happens because, like, a dominant partner is expecting me to do it. And I want to be clear here as well. You know, if you are a bisexual woman with a male partner, or if you want to have scenes where you do co-top and co-bottom involving men, you are absolutely allowed to do that, encouraged to do it. Like, my goal here is always to allow for more people to do more of the things that they want and less people to do things that they don't want to do. You know, if you already enjoy your dynamics, if you like having relationships and scenes where you are co-topping with your male dominant partner, or you do things in sort of like an exhibitionist voyeur sort of way, where the idea is that I'm doing this because I'm being watched by my male partner, like, absolutely do that. Feel free to. No judgment. The judgment that I have is for the people that make assumptions and act on those assumptions, which is just something I absolutely don't think that we should be doing in the kink community. And something that I do want to highlight with this that hasn't been my experience, but that I know has been other people's experiences and has been something that Kat has talked about, is that you also do get approached by women that are bisexual that do try to initiate these scenes where it's like, oh, I like to do this scene with you. Can my boyfriend watch? Can my dom watch? Can my dom participate in some way? Or the way that they propose scenes to you is that, like, they want their male partners to be involved. And, like, if you don't want that, that feels like not very great. If, in Kat's case, like, you're just straight and you just want to do BDSM with men and, like, no, actually, I don't really want to do this. Like, there can be a pushiness that's, like, uncomfortable. Like, you know, I think in the kink community, we do try to teach people how to take no's and to take them in stride and to not shame and guilt people into, you know, giving a yes when they don't really want to. Like, imagine any other scene where you're like, I really want to do this rope bondage scene with you. Do you want to do that with me? And then you ask the person and they're like, no, I'm not really into rope bondage. You know, I'm really just more of like a pure masochist, but we could do a spanking. And they're like, but I really want to do rope bondage with you. Like, it's generally not considered good to be pushy and to keep being like, oh, but can you do this thing with me? But will you do this thing with me? And for some reason, I think we're much more permissive of having those boundaries pushed, not with like particular scenes or acts, but with the genders of people that we want to do our BDSM things with. And it's totally acceptable. Like, if you just want to do BDSM play with women, you just want to do BDSM play with men, like, you can totally do that any way that you want to. Maybe people in the kink community have kind of like internalized this as, because their value set is to be very open and to be so accepting, that like in order to be open and accepting, like part of that is to be okay with doing bisexual stuff. And if you're not okay doing bisexual stuff, then that really means you're closed off and ignorant, and like you're not, like, again, going back to the you're not a real submissive comment, you know, this is a variation on that. Oh, you're not like a good kinkster, you're not like really open and progressive if you don't want to be bisexual. I hope that's not what it is, but just as a wild theory to put out there, like, maybe some part of it is that everybody here is open, and this is what being open and accepting means and looks like, and so you have to be willing to do this to, like, live your values? I don't know. This is such a complicated and confusing conversation because it intersects with so many things, right? You have the people that are assumed to be bisexual despite the fact they're not, being pressured in one way. We have the people who are bisexual being pressured to act in one way in order to have that happen. You have people that are bisexual that get shamed for wanting to do things in the way that they want to do them. Like, it just, there's so many levels and layers to this because, like, sexuality is complicated, interacting with humans is complicated, interacting with multiple humans at one time is complicated, and I really, with this, I want to open the conversation. I want to talk more about this because, again, like I said, I don't really have answers for this. My answer is that we need to just bring awareness to it, and then from there, I think, you know, we can have dialogue about it. And if there's one thing I do have faith in, it's our ability to have dialogue about things. You know, the more I think that our community has become aware of, you know, marginalized identities in the kink community, how to make things more accessible in terms of, you know, race aspects or gendered aspects or class aspects. Like, we, I think, have really been open to having those conversations and knowing how to act in better ways. And so maybe when it comes to assumptions about our sexualities and the ways that we want to perform our sexualities, we'll be able to move this in a better direction where, again, more people are doing more of the things that they want to do, less people are doing less of the things that they don't want to do. And that's really ultimately, I think, should be the end goal, is, you know, a very utilitarian idea of, like, more happiness, less unhappiness, maybe have that be our aim. So I guess to just sort of close out this video, hopefully I've said something that resonates with somebody, that makes sense. This is like, for me as a creative, this is like a scary conversation to have because I have no idea how people are going to interpret what I say. I'm not trying to kink shame. I'm not trying to tell anybody how to have their relationships, that the way that they want to do things is bad. Like, you know, I didn't even get into talking about unicorn hunting in this video, which I was sure was going to be a topic. Maybe we'll talk about it some other time. Like, you know, it's not about shaming anybody or telling them what they're doing is like bad. It's just, it's, you know, let's be better to each other. Let's build a better community. And I would love to know what your thoughts are about this, what your experiences have been as a bisexual person in the kink community. How has that been for you? As somebody who's not bisexual, have you ever had experiences where that has been assumed that you would be and then it turns out you weren't, and then people rejected you or decided not to play with you because of that? And how did you deal with that? So lots of thoughts, lots of opinions, lots of experiences, and I guess, as you know, Kat would typically say, I guess this was a little bit of a true tea episode of my own. You know, we're just trying to share our thoughts out here. We're just trying to, you know, we're not always right, but we're always honest, and we're gonna try and do that here today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Maybe, you know, as we get some more feedback about this, because this isn't something that is openly discussed, you know, maybe if I get some more feedback and ideas and opinions from y'all, maybe we'll do a follow-up, maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more. But yeah, just share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Any stories, any questions, anything else you want to share can also go down in the comment section as well. If you really enjoyed this, if you want to see more from me, please do subscribe. My videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related subjects. And finally, if you really want to support what I do, the best way you can do that is through Patreon. That is what allows me to make these videos every week and also allows me to offer you guys a bunch of exclusive perks and rewards. Speaking of, we are working towards 1,000 patrons. When I get to 1,000 patrons, we are going to have a bunch of extra bonus cool content. I have tons of ideas, like maybe a drama podcast. So if you are interested in that, please go ahead and check it out. A link to it will be down in the description box below. If you already support me over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you guys next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.